Hey everybody, I'm Jody Vance.
And I'm George Affleck.
And it's time for
Unspun for the win!
I thought you were going to work in some kind of aloha, as you can hear the surf rolling in the background here.
That's your job. I am back in Vancouver in the studio space. All by myself. Well, Amanda's here to babysit me, make sure I don't say something stupid. Uh, and but it's
I'm
kind of
usually
quiet
there to
here.
kick you under the table when you
I
do
know.
that
Yeah, it's true. No,
next week.
I wanted to refer to the win because we called this election. I mean, I called the majority, but I was always saying that the Liberals were going to win, so that's why I wanted to put that in there.
That is a
As
win.
a reference. Yeah, it's we called it, I think, on the show since way back. That I never thought the Conservatives would win, and I didn't think Scheer was resonating, no matter how you spell his name. So here we are.
You managed to work in a little bit of a flick at the mayor. We're going to get to Kennedy
Yeah.
Stewart and his the letter that we were mentioning last week
Hmm.
on the show here on Unspun. Got to mention though first, we shout out to people who are watching and following along at Unspun Podcast on Twitter. We've gotten a little bit of action on that. You have a couple people that have been reacting to some of the things you've been putting on there. They're still watching you, George, and learning from you. So congratulations on calling the election. I really had no idea how it was going to shake down, and all I knew is that I needed to vote in advance. And my whole, as you saw in the middle last week, my whole thing was just get out to vote. And it looks like that people did show up
No,
at the polls.
they
They
didn't.
didn't?
Well, it went down. We haven't seen the numbers on the millennials yet, but the number went down by
Right.
2%, I think, overall. So that's not unusual in a incumbency kind of situation. But I
Right.
think it was the poll. I love the pollsters were all saying we got it right, but they were all polling on the general number, which was 32 to 33% for the Conservatives got more votes but less seats. So, but it's pollsters can't determine the ridings, and there was a lot of speculation on what those would be, but there's also a lot of
Wasn't it
speculation.
Saanich? Like they had like 71%
Yeah.
constituents in Saanich show up.
Yeah, and then there was, of course, everybody speculating that BC would matter this time. This time, BC was going to determine the election, and I was always
No.
saying, no, it's not. It's not. Not in my lifetime has it ever done that. Why would that change now? So once again, Quebec and Ontario, and those two provinces determined whether the Liberals would have government. They called it as soon as it went live. I think here in Vancouver, by 7:15, I think CTV called it, and for the Liberal minority. Even at that point, it was pretty clear it was going to be a minority because we knew what the rest of the country was going to do.
But it was interesting, though, George, even with your very knowledgeable and bang on prediction,
Uh-huh.
you and I do go back and forth on these topics all week long as we prepare for Unspun. And we were chatting. I was at the beach because I'm, 3 hours behind,
Rub it
being
in,
on an island in the
rub it
middle of
in,
the.
rub it in, rub it
I
in,
know I
rubbing
will.
it
I
in.
can. Hey, you were by the pool for a good stretch last week. We'll both be in Raintown this time next week. But when we were going back and forth, you're like, "Are you watching this?" And I realized, oh man, it's like 1:15. I got to get back to the condo for 2 o'clock to watch this unfold online. And we were going back because it was like, okay, well, the Liberals have taken Atlantic Canada, and now we see what happens. And then it got a little precarious there for a sec, and then when push came to shove, clearly Justin Trudeau got what he needed in
Mhm.
Quebec in the 905.
905 took it all, and so now he has 156 seats. That's enough for him not to worry. I mean, it's not a majority, but on the environmental issues, they're not going to vote against those things. On the pipeline stuff, the Conservatives aren't going to vote against that stuff. He's already made it clear that he's going to move forward with the Trans Mountain pipeline. So that's a go. But the Green Party, they're going to make a difference now. They're going to mandate the environmental issues with their 3 seats. I mean. I think
You
Elizabeth
love
May,
that.
she's living in some kind of fantasy world.
Well, isn't she holding a press conference at some point to talk
Sometime,
about how she's going to use her 3 seats to form the balance of? I don't know what's happening there. What are we seeing? Unspin
yeah,
that for me, George.
it's called the delusion of grandeur. The Green Party really, obviously, the biggest disappointment. NDP, we've heard a lot about how well they did as far as not getting it completely destroyed, and
Yeah.
so Jagmeet Singh managed to save the party from being obliterated, but they went down by over 20 seats, so that's not much of a victory. And the Green Party got 3 seats. She doubled her caucus. It's like, talk about spin. I'm doubled my caucus. I got 3. I mean, okay.
3. I was actually quite surprised. I have to be honest. I thought with all the climate strike and the climate, blah, 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 and there's another piece of the puzzle of what we get into in the media, what we start to chew on and we dive into isn't necessarily the narrative with the voter. How many times have you said that over the course of the 42 weeks of Unspun that we've done, is how we all dive, an inch wide and a mile deep on this stuff. But Jim and Joan Public go a mile wide and an inch deep, and they've made their decision and they're not listening to the rest of it.
No, and the environmental stuff, I never thought, people kept saying, oh, that's the election issue. And I never thought that was the election issue. I think it came down to affordability, stay the course, the future, progressive, but without being too progressive in a way. You look at their BC market, the BC region, very a good sampling of the country as a whole. You got the entire north is conservative, pretty much, and then the lower mainland is a mixture of Liberals and NDP. Very similar to, you look at city councils, and they're very sort of center, left of center in this region. That's why in Vancouver, running a mushy middle kind of approach, don't be too right wing in Vancouver, because you'll never win as a party, as the NPA have learned now in how many elections. It's
a little bit bitter in there, George. A little bit bitter.
Just how many times do I have to explain this to them?
Right. You are wise in that way, though. Like, let's just pause for a minute, because you have been saying what you just reiterated right there. You have been saying since before the writ drop, frankly, and you've said so many times that when it comes to elections, these are the issues, or these are the platforms and how people run. It's either stay the course, or fear, or radical change. And at the end of the day, that's what decided things here. And it appears with the Liberal minority that many people did find it difficult, maybe held their nose, but still voted for Justin Trudeau's Liberal government. One thing I wanted to ask you about this is when people are talking about how minority governments typically don't have staying power, and are we looking at another election in 18 months based on what you're seeing?
No, I don't think so. I think that based on the strength of this majority, the fact that none of the parties have money, I think that there's no will there to do it. I think that and I think Harper proved that you can run a minority government for a long period of time. He ran almost a full election cycle. Right. So that average number, I think, is based on many years ago. The last couple of minority governments have just gone a long time, and we see that happening here in BC. We've gone now 3 years almost without a minority government, and it seems like it'll make it to the full course. So, I think that it really comes down to money. I think these parties can't afford it. NDP will be in major debt. I would imagine Conservatives will be looking at their leadership. They have to get rid of Scheer. I would say that he was their challenge, and he just didn't resonate with all the stuff that Trudeau had to face. I mean, Trudeau tried to run a stay the course campaign, but he had so many controversial issues.
Controversies,
constantly defending himself. So it kind of was a stay the course campaign with, I'm sorry, don't, but then
damage control.
Yeah, and Scheer ran the fear campaign, and then NDP and Greens are radical change and change. But it was all a dirty campaign, and we talked about that long ago, how this would be a dirty campaign, and it was dirty, and it seems to be dirty as the new normal, and that's not good. And especially
it even seems dirty today, like Wexit. Like even right now, Alberta's so pissed. What's happening?
Yeah. Or the speeches on the speech night, all of them stepping on each other. So that was just tacky, but I think it was intentional on Trudeau's part.
Of course it was.
Because we're all watching television, we know. So
they know exactly who's on and when, and typically it is concession speech, and acceptance speech.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's how it goes. Being, way out of the time zone in the middle of the Pacific, like I said, watching that unfold for us, because we're watching the coverage, online, and that being the big story, the second after the numbers were tallied, obviously, watching Jagmeet Singh do his 17 minutes. And then it's like, okay, he's got to be wrapping up at some point. Good for him. That's great. What a turnaround for him. And then Andrew Scheer taking his time, walking on stage with his 5 kids and his wife, and comes up, speaks for a minute, and then it was Donna Friesen, I think it was. Yeah, it was Donna Friesen that I was watching, and she had both the double boxes come up of the two leaders and kind of said, "This is highly unusual.
Worst,
We're gonna
worst
go
nightmare as a broadcaster. You know that, like that kind of
totally."
awkward situation.
But she did say something that I thought was brilliant and nonpartisan, which people will attack any media for whatever reason if they don't like it. But she said, "You know what? We're going to go with the guy who got the most votes."
Well,
And
oops.
then they stopped programming and replayed all of Scheer's uh, entire speech after. So I thought, I mean, it was the worst case scenario from a programming standpoint. I thought it was low classy, I guess, by our prime minister now to do that, because he knew that. And it was
It
just
was.
like one little,
I don't want to use the word because it's offensive, but it starts with a D. It was a total D move. It's just like, dude. I'll use that word,
dude,
dude move.
dude
Uh,
move.
I'm in charge now, buddy. It's over for
Right.
you.
Yeah.
Adios.
Yeah.
Get out of the house.
You
I'm in
lose.
charge. You lose. Bye bye.
Mm.
But it's very. I think it's indicative of the again going back to that about how the nature of politics now and how dirty it's getting, and this it's not a good sign that this gentlemanly behavior, to use a gender specific term, but is kind of going the way of it's unfortunate and it's not good for our society. I don't think.
I agree. I think they should step back and learn from that. From afar, my POV was, I can't believe that's the narrative after an election that was that close and that vicious. And, here we are talking, it almost seemed like we're talking about schoolyard crap
Mhm.
when there are so many issues, like pressing issues that need to be addressed, as you mentioned earlier, affordability, housing, senior care, medical care, pharmacare. There's so much that we should be talking about,
Mhm.
and what the platform might mean now that we have a liberal minority. How you can't steamroll the way you can if you have a majority. Like, how are these guys going to work together? Men and women going to work together?
Well, now, and as you mentioned earlier, Wexit, Wexit, a Wexit, a Wexit, do-do-do-do-do. So we've got Wexit now, and whatever, the newest term is in how Trudeau will handle that. And I would say that he likely will, as his father did in the 70s, he put Jack Austin in for BC because he was Senator Jack Austin to represent British Columbia because he felt that the Liberals did not have proper representation west of Ontario. And so that was effective. It calmed everybody down to a certain degree. And so I would imagine Trudeau will look for the same kind of. It's interesting how he's basically reliving his dad's life right now. It's kind of freaky.
Weird, right?
Yeah, majority, minority. Got to find a
Yeah.
guy in the West to represent the West. For Alberta, it's kind of freaky. I actually try not to live my dad's life, but because
Yeah.
he died at 49, so that would not be good.
Yeah. No. Let's move to provincial politics on that light
I
note,
went
George.
I went
Holy,
dark. I
holy
went
crap.
dark.
Okay. You went dark. Well, let's lighten it up with one of the pieces of our unspun puzzle from last week was how Kennedy Stewart used Vancouver City
Ugh.
Hall letterhead to basically endorse anybody but Harper,
Hmm.
which Andrew Scheer, if you spell it Scheer. I digress. But our Premier John Horgan kind of played it both ways, didn't he?
Yeah, he was duding it up with both guys, both Jagmeet and Trudeau, but
His
he didn't
buddy
hang out with.
Justin.
Yeah, he didn't hang out with Scheer, but he didn't offend him either.
Right.
And that was just a stupid move, and especially on letterhead. And I would say, as I mentioned last week, there is a policies and procedures that I think he broke those rules, and I think there'll be some sort of there should be some sort of investigation into that, and he should be punished in any way we can, the mayor of Vancouver, for doing that, because there are I think it was 50,000 people voted conservative in the last election in Vancouver. So that's a lot of people in Vancouver who are conservative supporters who now have a mayor that they believe is absolutely does not represent their ideals, and that's not his job. He's elected. He's supposed to represent the people as a whole. Clearly, he doesn't. And then
Right.
also imagine if Scheer had won, how awkward that would have been in that first meeting. So I think the premier did a good job at playing both sides and being friendly to both. And he will be smart to get what he wants provincially. But I would say some of those smaller or some of the areas around the city that went conservative, I think that will be interesting to see what effect that will have on those ridings.
Issues in the BC legislature that will be keeping Premier John Horgan busy likely anyway. Lots of big news to cover. Let's start with the fact that Linda Reid has decided not to run for re-election.
Yeah, the controversial one. So she is mostly known in recent days as being unwilling to be interviewed as part of the investigation into the Speaker's office with the second investigation. And likely she is being interviewed by the RCMP. I don't think she can get out of that. And she also is known for Muffin Gate. Is that what we call it now? Muffin
Yes.
Muffin Machine Gate?
Wasn't it
What was it?
Was it a $2,000 muffin rack when she was Speaker?
Yes. I mean, I like muffins, but I don't think I need a rack for it.
No. No, and certainly not one that's worth more than $50.
Yeah, I don't even know where that went. Anyways, and so log splitters, muffin machines. What is that speaker? What is speaker? Seems to have everything they need over there. So she is now adiosing it, leaving, saying she's not going to run again. I think she'll be the first of. We've had two now, Liberals saying they're not running in the next election in the last week. So there'll be more to come. A lot of them have reached she'd been there for almost 30 years, I think.
Yeah.
So she's well past her potential retirement package deal. But others you'll see popping away. But she's leaving under a cloud for sure. And that's never good, it's always unfortunate. And we'll have to wait and see what happens with the RCMP investigation.
We'll be keeping you in the know in the unspun fashion that we are accustomed to here, George and I. Make sure you do follow George while we're at it. I haven't even mentioned you on Twitter at George
_
Affleck. I'm at Jody with a Y Vance, so you can follow us. And Unspun Podcast is our handle, our very snarky, snazzy, and smart social media gal, who's George's better half. The smart one here in the room, making sure we don't get ourselves into trouble. Sometimes we do. Let's talk about the ICBC news today. David Eby, the Attorney General, very disappointed with a court ruling that he thought was going to go through, to the point that it is going to impact the budget that is the dumpster fire at ICBC. This could be a $400 million hit, in that the court has ruled that what Eby had proposed, the plan for ICBC was to cap the number of medical experts that you could call in a claim case, right, again, versus ICBC. You want this doctor and this doctor and this doctor to tell your tale of injury. They wanted to cap it at 3. The court said that messes with our due process and you can't do that. I found that fascinating.
Yes, and what a shocker. The court saying that a bunch of politicians can't tell them what to do. Of course they shouldn't be telling them what to do. And clearly this is a bad news for the provincial government. It's going to hurt the bottom line. They haven't hit the other issue, which was the capping of the rates of the amount of payouts. They did lower that to a significant amount, but they're taking on the entire legal community, and that's always challenging. I've heard that the Liberal or the NDP will be.
Sorry, I got a plane.
I was going to say, what is?
Welcome to Maui. Here,
nice.
I'll give you just a little tour here. Where we are.
Oh, very nice. Oh, okay.
We're on the flight.
Wow, are you literally on the water? Like you're in the almost the water's almost above your deck.
Almost, yeah.
Wow, nice.
I know. I'm living the rough life here, George. So what you were saying?
Yes. So it looks like the NDP will challenge this and take it all the way. I don't know how far they'll go.
Which means to me, we're going to spend more money to lose more money, to owe more money, and then at the end of the day, there's only one taxpayer, and everybody has to go through ICBC to drive. So ultimately, our rates are going up again.
Yeah. Oh, that too, of course. The key with these guys, this is quite common, and as I've talked about this before, the same people in the NDP back room are the same people that were behind Vision. Being litigious is an effective way to punt something down the road so you don't have to deal with it politically. So if they can keep punting that issue, they can say, hey, well, we're still trying. If we win this at the Supreme Court, then we'll get that money back or whatever. So don't give up yet, everybody. So they love that stuff. The amount of lawsuits in Vancouver, under Vision Vancouver, and all these same people, Jeff Meggs, they jumped astronomically, and most of them were, I believe, nonsense lawsuits, and especially things related to Kinder Morgan and pipelines. And you're like, okay, what is Vancouver? What? So this is definitely a political approach to punt this down, so you don't have to take the heat yet. Hey, we're trying. We're doing this for the people. It's likely, given what the judge said today, is that that's not going to be successful. I would highly doubt that they will be successful. A politician telling the courts how to operate.
It is going to be a dumpster fire for some time. One of the things, Richard Zussman actually was interviewing David Eby. I heard a clip. I was listening to my radio player app, and I heard it on CKNW, where he was like, Mr. Eby, you had said not long ago that in a year you'd balance things out at ICBC based on increases and whatnot. Now David Eby's just kind of flipped it to the 2-year possible plan. Like it just got, double.
He'll get to it on the backs of 17-year-old drivers who have to pay $5,000 insurance.
It's crazy. That is so sad, and that is a topic that we should hit on another day. But I want to get to City Council because there's a lot going on there, including it's almost like Christmas for you. Colleen Hardwick unwrapped a unanimous motion for you, George.
Yes, having an Auditor General for the City of Vancouver. Other major cities have this. Basically, this person will be arm's length, an employee of the city, probably effectively around $1 million budget, so significant. But this person will be able to, the city gets an audit, so there's some confusion out there. The city gets an audit every year about their financials.
Right.
So what happened? Is everything above board, and the financials, everything match up, and But this is an audit where, in real time, in a way, they'll be looking at how effective the operations are and how efficient departments are and where the money's going, and are we getting enough money?
Departments like
maybe communications with its 43 staff.
They could probably pare that down a bit.
Oh my God. Anyway, so there's $5 million right there.
Right. So this is an independent auditor.
Arm's length, not independent, arm's length, still an employee.
Arm's length, right.
Yeah.
So still an employee,
yeah.
But unanimously voted in
unanimously
by
supported.
City Council.
There was some apprehension by certain councillors and rumors that certain councillors wouldn't vote for it, but in the end it was unanimous, including the mayor.
Slight amendments.
Nothing too effective, more about making sure that we're tracking the success of this investment.
Right.
So, my hope is that there's a clarity in the ROI, the return on investment on this. If we're going to spend $1 million, can we save 10, 20, 30? Right. How much can we save? It also takes the politics out of it. So for me, when I was there, I was always talking about finances, and I could never have brought a motion like that forward. There was no way Vision Vancouver would ever have supported it. But I talked a lot about transparency and about departmental budgets and about efficiency. And so this is a really effective way, and I'm glad to see that Colleen managed to get her fellow colleagues on the council, all of them, to get on board with this and support it. So it's not going to make staff happy, because it's going to inundate them with they're going to be happy.
They clearly were
details.
not. No. Yeah, they were not happy when it went through unanimously. But there were a couple things on the docket that people didn't get to, including Pete Fry's fireworks. Wanting to ban private use of fireworks. We talked about that a little bit last week. That'll be tonight. Yeah.
So about 20 people, I think, signed up. Yeah, there were 20 speakers signed up tonight for that one alone. And quite a mixed group, but mostly supportive of fireworks, from what I can tell from this, the speakers that they're listing. So it's one of those ones, and I've talked about this. Fireworks is like dogs, and it just creates a big bunch of it's such a wedge thing, and it's complicated. I hear wind.
Yeah.
I hear wind.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Is that on my microphone?
Yeah, your microphone's blowing.
Sorry.
That's all right. Oh, okay. That's all. That's all.
That's all. I'm very windy.
Yeah, it's nice. That's better. Just face that way.
Oh, face this way. Here we go. Better?
Yeah, that's good. That's fine.
Okay. So, Oppenheimer Park. We haven't talked about Oppenheimer Park yet. What's the latest on that from City Hall?
Yeah, a motion passed last night. Actually, I think Melissa DeGenova voted against every part of it. They broke it down into like 8 parts, and Melissa voted against every single one of them. And her argument being, this is not why are we doing this? The motion was really came from Lisa Delminato and Michael Weeb from the Greens.
Yeah.
And it looked like it had been massaged a lot, and I think Lisa was trying to make it a bit more hard hitting, and maybe she had to change some things to make Michael happy. It's kind of one of those motions that's a little bit of letter writing, telling people, hey, you could do something. I can't
It's your
see.
favorite thing, a harshly worded letter.
No, I still believe the mayor. I think if they were to sit down and really talk about this, I think there's a way for this council to move in there through the police. And what's it going to take?
And
Somebody's
get
going
it
to
done.
die before we have to do that.
Not
So
good.
we'll see, but I'm not particularly optimistic about what that motion will have any effect. And
I had like great optimism in my middle this week. I'm not sure if you had a chance to read my column all the way from Maui. I had the poo poo pundits. I had the group of people. Poo poos are appetizers.
yes,
When you
I
come to
know
Hawaii, that's
poo-poos.
what they're called. PU,
I
just
call
for
them
the people.
poo-poos
I'm
here too.
unspinning.
I
Do
call them
you?
poo-poos all the time. Yeah,
Do
that's
you
what we
have poo
call them.
poos on the lanai?
We
Because
just do
that's
it
what we were doing.
every dinner party. We always bring out the poo-poos.
Well, we have the poo poo pundits here, and we had Dale from Nova Scotia and Brian from Alberta, and my son Brady, who's 12 and quite engaged in politics. He likes it. My parents, of course, Mom and Bruce, were all here, and we were watching the election coverage unfold and the countdown. So I kind of tell the story of that on my column in the Orca. But the one thing that we all resoundingly agreed on was great from Monday's election was the big fat zero under the People's Party of Canada.
Yes. Adios, buddy. Goodbye. Thank you. No, thank you. Get out.
I'm so proud of Canadians for not even really giving Maxime Bernier a nod.
And he was MP for like 18 years in that riding.
Yeah.
Completely like bam, smashed down like by thousands and thousands of votes, not even close to winning. And so that's a statement to anybody who thinks that Quebec is heading in some direction that's not, cool or Trumpy or whatever it might be. That sends a message to Canada that this country is not accepting of the kinds of things he was saying, this populist bullshit.
Yeah.
And I see it in Vancouver happening sometimes, and certainly for me in office. And there are people in the NPA who have those kind of attitudes that would try to push me to say things, and I'd be like, no, it's not. That's not what we are about. So I'm glad to see that.
I love that.
Yeah.
No populist bullshit. And on that note, from Maui and from Vancouver, that's it for
Jazz
UnSpun
hands.
Podcast.
Bye.
Jazz hands.